of the writers of the 1968 Elvis Singer Special, Mr. Allan Blye, is here. Allan Blye, along with Chris Beard, was one of the great writers of this and helped formulate the plan for it. And so let's have a hand for Allan Blye, a TV legend. There you go. Good to see you, Allan. There you go, right there. Did you bring your guitar? There you go. I called you a TV legend. There's so many people that are a part of this show today that have worked with you before. Jay Osmond was so excited you were going to be here. You've done so much, but all the show you worked on the Smothers Brothers, Andy Williams show. He was the voice of Cookie Bear on the Andy Williams show. Worked with Super Dave Osborne for years, and one of my favorite shows. But you and Chris Beard worked on this 1968 special. And how did you get the job? I know Steve Binder was the director, but how did you and Chris come to work on this special?
Well, we had promised one another that we would, once we got a chance, whatever one of us got our first break, would bring the other one in. And I got the first break. He was doing Laughing, I was doing the Smothers Brothers, and they thought that these guys were kind of cutting-edge variety show producers, writers.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting this. This is a wonderful audience. Oh, these people, you got up early today, folks. Wow, you're wonderful.
One of the things about this special that is interesting is we see it now as a completed product, but at the time, you and Chris were trying to find a way to tell Elvis's story. How did you come up with the idea of kind of telling his life?
Well, we spent 6 weeks with him every day and listening to him. And he told us every story that he remembered of his life. And he told us the ingredients of his life. And he told a remarkable story.
That life, that small town that he came from and the struggles that he had. And so you guys came up with the Guitar Man as kind of the theme of the show. And how was Elvis? I mean, you worked with the Smothers Brothers, all the other stars that you've worked with. How was Elvis as a co-worker and someone to write for?
You know, when I first got the show, it was a job for me. I'll work it. And I was so astounded. He was such a remarkable performer. He impressed me so much. He came out with his powerful display of his ethics, and he was a true hard performer of his career.
Yeah. There was someone else that was around the set at that time, and that's Colonel Parker.
Yeah.
And I remember Steve Binder and Billy Goldenberg had some things to say about Colonel Parker. What say you about the presence of the Colonel?
Well, the presence of the Colonel, Chris and I had planned a meeting with the Colonel. We were going to meet with him at the end of the 6 weeks, and we were going to explain to him we had an idea for the series, for a special of series, and he introduced himself to us, and he said, "Listen, boys, I have this idea for the show. We'll just do a number of Christmas songs."
Who's going to stand up to Colonel if he says that, right?
Well, we said to Steve, listen, you know, the Colonel has an idea for a series of shows for Elvis, and partly for us to do something that's against what the Colonel was thinking of. And Steve said, "We hired you guys because we want to hear what you guys have to say about Elvis Presley." And I said, "Okay, well, we'd like to do a show with Elvis that stems from his story that he had been telling us about himself." And we did an entire gospel sequence, an entire special material sequence, and an entire dance sequence. And Steve said, "We love that idea. What else do you want to do? We'd like to expand his career into our careers. We want to tell him what we'd like to say. We'd like to tell him what our plans are for him." And they said, "We want to hear what his plans are." And they found us inventive and interesting, and they backed us every inch of the way. And
when I talked to Steve Bender those years ago, he talked about that Elvis had a trust of himself, of Steve, and of you and Chris, and really let you see who he really was, and that you were able to take that and make it into a story. And like you said, Steve had your back to keep you. But Steve had to balance working with Colonel and working with Elvis and the network over here. I mean, he was really somebody that was, you know, dealing with a lot of that while you guys
he was terrific.
Yeah. And there was a night that you guys were together and the assassination of RFK happened. Mm-hmm. And tell us about that time. What happened when you guys heard about that?
Oh, I remember that time. And Chris, who was a guy with a great sense of humor, showed me the respect that he had for Elvis. When the chips were down, he crossed himself, and he couldn't believe what his eyes had just told him it was true. And so difficult for us to get this under our skins. He was so torn by his upset that he could not forgive himself. He was such a torn individual, and when his spirit was at his lowest ebb, he came through with flying colors. I was so upset. I learned from him, from Chris, that there was a spirit to his great endurance and how he lived through his most difficult moments. And I remember I was a witness to it. And at this time in my career, my brother was with me as well. He worked for the Colonel. He had his own career at his own expense, and I was able to share that with him. I'm sorry to get such a serious moment in my career. But my career was also invested in Elvis at that time in my career. Yeah, I was so touched by Elvis and how he had performed for us.
You all were a main reason that for one of the first times he did a song that he believed in. And that was because of you guys.
Yes.
And he told Steve, I'll never do another song I don't believe in. So you guys made an impact with what you did in that special and telling that story. You and Chris and Steve and Billy.
Thank you. Those guys were terrific.
And we just, when you see these people approaching you, because they're going to know who you are now, we just want to say thank you.
Thank
when
you.
we see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Allan Blye in the 1968 Elvis comeback special. Also Super Dave and the Smothers Brothers and the Andy Williams Show and the Osmond Brothers Show.